All right, headed to the airport. So I'm flying to Puerto Rico this morning. The time is currently 1:45 a.m. Got a really early flight out of Kansas City, hour-and-a-half drive to get there. I'm a little bit nervous, but I think that's a good thing. It's gonna be a heck of an adventure. I'm hanging out with some cool people, and who knows what we'll get ourselves into. I'm really excited to see what happens. Stay tuned. So, Sam Travis of Puerto Rico Paramotor invited me down for the week to do some beach flying. Upon arrival, we piled into a van full of paramotors and checked into our fancy Airbnb.
Alright guys, this is a new tip steer toggle that we just made it. See? It's a two-finger toggle. Wing over, barrel roll. That's kind of how it goes. If you're interested, let us know if you're interested.
At DM me for more information.
Extra game changer.
Extra game changer.
First bite!
The wind was a little too fierce day one, so we showed off our kiting skills and eventually hang tested our brand new PAP paramotors that we'd be flying for the week. We finally ran into the sky, and it was immediately evident that this flying trip was going to be like nowhere I'd ever flown before. Sam did a great job briefing us on the area, and I quickly linked up with Mr. Stay-Bad himself, Danielo Mendez, a personality larger than life, and we pointed our paragliders to an island with thousands of monkeys. You guys might recognize the blue paraglider as Rob Candela. Somehow, life keeps throwing us together in the most exotic locations. I followed Sam down the coast, skimming a few feet above the beach. I was quickly blown away by how few people there were, which really made for a relaxing cross-country flight while I got in tune with the new motor provided by Puerto Rico Paramotor. And not just any paramotor, we were flying my all-time favorite setup, the PAP Tinox 1500, that can push a 140 centimeter prop with the powerful Moster 185. I quickly found myself floating above the clouds. I even nailed my first ever barrel roll above the clouds, which set the bar pretty high, despite getting a nice crispy sunburn. Meanwhile, back in Kansas, it's safe to say I wasn't missing much back home. Flight number 1 was insane, and I'd officially earned a night out on the town in shorts and a t-shirt. Plenty of fun was had, and bright and early, it was time to head to our next flying spot. If I had to pick a favorite spot from the Puerto Rico Paramotor trip, the beaches around Isabella would definitely take the cake. There was something so iconic about the crashing waves and staggering cliffs here. I had no idea how cool the spot was about to be, but I couldn't wait to dive right in. Sure, we may have been flirting with danger here just a bit, but we did gear up with flotation devices and take all the necessary precautions just in case we pulled a reverse Icarus and flew too close to the surface. In this case, the risk was worth the reward. The water was a perfect Kool-Aid blue, and the sand was packed to perfection for touch and goes and foot dragging. If this was our only flight of the trip, I think I would have left feeling fulfilled, but I'd go on to rack up another 15 hours on this motor over the course of the next few days. I spotted a majestic sea turtle, and Daniello captured a really cool photo of Rob and I. Moments later, Rob landed to grab his camera. He got completely taken out by a huge wave while taking these photos, but hey, he got the shot. Gracias, amigo, your efforts were not in vain. We packed things up and checked into our next Airbnb, where I was cornered by an 8-legged monster. I'm not sure why I thought a hand towel would help, but I knew I wasn't sleeping until this guy was gone. Normally, spiders don't bother me, but you guys, this was the fastest spider in the history of fastest spiders. I missed by a mile, and thankfully Sam showed up with a broom and rescued me. Margaritas were in order, and we could all finally rest easy before getting back to what we came here to do. The next morning, one of us had a faulty spark plug, so Sam went on a parts run while we roamed around a new section of the island. None of us were really sure where we were going, but I figured hitting the coast and following the beach would be a surefire way to have fun. Also, if you know me, you know I have a fascination with lighthouses. Secretly, I knew of one in the area, so I was glad Rob and Daniello decided to follow.
Hey, keep me where the light is, keep me where the brightest, to left feet, can you show me?
So, Puerto Rico is infested with iguanas. They were literally everywhere, and it was kind of funny seeing them perched on these rocks sunbathing. We also spotted tons of stingray on this flight, and after a few more barrel rolls, we finally arrived at our destination. The lighthouse was 100% worth it to me, even if it meant getting caught in some turbulent air. It's funny how things work out though. Sam was nearby with the van, and after spotting a safe area, we each landed our paramotors and waited for Sam to come to the rescue. The wind eventually calmed back down, and we went to a new spot to meet up with a group of Puerto Rican paramotor pilots. So far, everyone in Puerto Rico was beyond friendly and welcomed us with open arms.
All right, and it's go time.
I love the Piper.
I love the Viper.
Yeah, it's a great wing. This one's at the end of its life, and I need a new one.
I will go to somewhere that's never cold. Might just stay till I'm gray, and my worries wash away. Will you keep me where the light is? Keep me where the light is. Will you keep me where the light is? Keep me where the light is.
This new beach was perfect for some midday shenanigans. There were palm trees lining the shore, which made it a bit narrow, but you couldn't help but appreciate the way these beaches seemed untouched. They were full of natural beauty, and we were fortunate enough to explore them in the coolest way possible. On one of these beaches, Rob and I spotted an old boat half buried in the sand, so we decided to foot drag our way out to it and hang out. Reaching remote areas is just one of the many reasons flying a paramotor never gets old. In no time, we relocated the boat and lined things up for a quick touch and go. A spontaneous kiting war broke out, as paramotor pilots do, and a few more touch and goes were in order before we decided this area would be super neat to explore on foot. Flying to places you can only reach with a tiny chairplane is one of the best feelings.
The scene.
Rob and I are no stranger to these little expeditions, and we couldn't wait to see what we'd find washed up on this section of the beach, which turned out to be a lot creepier than I ever could have imagined. We explored for what felt like miles of the beach before the wind started picking up again, and that was our cue to strap back in and head back to the van. We arrived hungry for adventure and got as much as we could swallow before we slalomed our way back. We waved at all the locals on the beach, toe-tapped palm trees, all while trying my very best not to sandblast Sam's propeller. I was definitely living my best life down here in Puerto Rico, and really the only reason I needed to land was to reapply sunscreen. It just snowed another 12 inches back in Kansas, which really helped add to my appreciation of being somewhere tropical. After another unbelievable day of flying, we poured ourselves some celebratory margaritas, which ultimately led to Daniello trying to teach us how to breakdance.
Split your legs, split.
You can about imagine just how well that ended.
And your weight has to be shifted to the left, to the right. I swear.
In the blink of an eye, it was time to head back to the beaches of Isabella. It was Rob's birthday, and we were about to throw him a good old-fashioned paramotor sky party. So, wingman is a cheesy phrase, but it's cool when you've flown with someone long enough that you feel like you're perfectly in sync and can predict each other's every move. That's when flying really gets fun. Rob and I have never had helmet communications to orchestrate what we do, but we just fly by the seat of our pants, and luckily, it tends to work out. We didn't have a real flight plan for this day, and I don't think the wind ever dropped much below 15 miles per hour, but somehow this ended up being one of the most legendary flying days ever. I don't think you can feel much freer than floating down the beach with your arms stretched out like a bird. Once again, I'd reached Cloud 9 both literally and figuratively, and the fun was only just getting started. Typically, high wind is a bad thing where I come from, but here, it unlocked a whole new flying style that was just way too much fun. There's nothing more majestic than an effortless high wind touch and go. I've always enjoyed precision proximity flying. Anything tight and narrow is kind of my jam, and these wind speeds almost made it all happen in slow motion. At one point, Rob and I did a wingtip bump out on this tiny little island just offshore. We held the wingtip bump all the way through our takeoff and spot landed back on the mainland for more wingtip bumps about 15 seconds later. Feeling more in tune with my gear than ever, I seen some jagged rocks lining the shore and knew exactly how to test my spot landing skills. There was something pretty magical about pumping the brakes at the perfect time to avoid getting sprayed by a wave. The tide was low, exposing lots of rocks, which gave me the brilliant idea to try my hand at a thing I like to call paramotor hopscotch. If you're just creative enough, flying a paramotor will only become more fun the longer you fly. I wouldn't encourage landing on rocks in the ocean to anyone else, but this is something I trusted my abilities with, and the risk was definitely worth the reward. Rob followed suit with the hopscotching, and needless to say, it was a pretty unforgettable birthday beach session. This was my favorite flying day of them all, and it must have looked like fun because by the end, we even had the birds joining in on the hopscotching fun. Bright and early, we arrived at a location that was more inland. Like usual, I wasn't sure what we'd be getting ourselves into, but Puerto Rico hadn't let me down yet, and this flight was no different than the rest. After a pretty surreal sunrise, I was having a blast just buzzing around the trees down low in search of anything that might spark my interest. Back home, I spend a lot of my time flying down endless rows of corn. Here in Puerto Rico, it was really neat to cut away from the beach scene and dive into some of the agricultural differences found closer to the equator. And this spot was plantain heaven. Eventually, Sam, Daniela, Rob, and I all linked up, and I think this was about the only flight where all four of us stuck together in formation for the duration of the flight. The air was butter smooth, so we could carve around down low as much as we pleased, and we kinda just played follow the leader behind Sam while he showed us all the sweet spots. I could have carved down low all morning, but the wind did start to pick up a bit, so we turned things around and headed back to the LZ. This was definitely a new type of terrain for me. All the trees and plants I'd never seen before had me looking like a kid in a candy store, I'm sure. And eventually we found a stream that we'd follow all the way back out to the ocean to complete the morning flight finale. The trees got a little tight, but I wasn't about to shy away from another opportunity to shine my shoes in style. Like fish in an aquarium, Rob circled some old chimneys, and finally, we reached the beach once again. It was time to wrap up the flight, so we raced each other down a nearby drag strip before gracefully touching back down to Earth.
Yeah, it was amazing. I had a blast, yeah.
We spent one last night at our fancy Airbnb, but this trip wouldn't be complete until we crossed off the last beach on the list.
Puerto Rico. Let's do it.
Puerto Rico. Let's go, Puerto Rico!
So not only was this my last flight in Puerto Rico, but little did I know, it'd also be my last flight on my beloved ITV Piper 18 meter. To no surprise, I still flew it like I did know it was my last flight on this wing. After floating past another sweet lighthouse and waving at a bunch of surfer dudes, I foot drug my way to a landmark called the Birth of the New World. This is a massive sculpture of Christopher Columbus, coming in at 360 feet. It dwarfs our Statue of Liberty and ranks as the tallest sculpture in North America. And as impressive as this mega sculpture was, the sea caves and arches surrounding the area were equally fun to play around. I flapped my wings until I caught back up to the group, and the sadness was starting to sink in, knowing I'd be boarding a plane back to sub-zero temps in Kansas before too long. I still had 30 minutes of fun in my fuel tank, and I'm happy to say that I used every last second on my last throwdown with the trusty Piper. We did more wing walking, foot dragging, and all the spot landings that eventually destroyed my chase cam. Shout out to PPG Smoke for hooking me up with a few more. Puerto Rico holds so much raw, untouched beauty. Its jagged shoreline with enormous crashing waves definitely make it one of my favorite areas that I've flown to this day. Add a few like-minded individuals in the group, and you've got yourself a recipe for paramotor adventure success. For me, Puerto Rico was so much more than what I captured with my little GoPros. It was all the street foods that you can't taste through a video, the feeling of sand between your toes, and the fresh ocean air that you can't smell without actually being present. These are just a few reasons that you need to come check it out for yourself. And I've got to say, Sam Travis of Puerto Rico Paramotor was more than hospitable for this epic paramotor adventure. If this flying trip looked like any fun at all, definitely don't hesitate to reach out to Sam. Just having paramotors readily available made my life so easy. So, huge shout out to both Sam and Michelle for opening your home to us, letting us drive your golf cart, and giving us the opportunity to see what Puerto Rico is all about. Thanks for watching, guys.